Okay, so the question is how to do the basic UV mapping and what UV mapping is in general. So let's see if I'm able to explain it to you. Maybe before I go to Blender, I'll change. Okay, I'm trying to get this to speaker mode, but it's not for some reason showing me on the big screen. So let's go back to okay. So what I wanted to show you first before we go into Blender is what UV mapping is like with a physical object. So okay, I'll get one object here. Okay, say hello to this little guy. He waved at you. See? Anyway, so the vertex painting that we have done before has been a little bit like we had been painting this guy directly, and the bad thing has been that we can't really export those colors that are vertex colors, and and for games and other purposes, we often want to take stuff out of Blender or some other modeling program, and not just for games, for animations too, and for all kinds of purposes. So what to do? So the idea here is not to paint the surface, but to cover the model with a sort of, okay, let's see, what can I use? Maybe some, okay, you stay here for a while and I'll get something to cover you. Okay, we are getting the armlet still. An old-fashioned person, so although I do read lots of news online, I also want to read them in my morning paper. Okay, so UV mapping is a little bit like covering this object with a sheet of paper and then painting it. However, if I would do it this way, it's not very practical. Like I have to crumple it up in weird ways, like this. Maybe rip it, and although I can export this crumpled, painted and crumpled up paper later on, it won't look good on the model when I'm painting it. It's too it's not working like this. In other words, so what we do instead is to rip this paper into smaller pieces, or maybe cut it even, and then cover the model with these slips. And you have to imagine that I had glue on me or somewhere, and I would glue these slips of paper onto the model so that they would fit nicer. And then maybe I should also think about if I could have like a long slip over here, long strip, and then paint that. And then we will just export these by putting them on like one sheet. And then the program knows how to reassemble these strips again on the model. Yeah, Tina is asking like Easter egg files, a little bit like that. So I'm not sure if this analogy is 100% accurate. Well, I'm sure it isn't, by the way, but it gives the general idea of what we're doing in UV mapping. Okay, so say bye-bye, little guy, bye-bye. And let's get into Blender then. I bought this from a Swedish weird shop at the time for my children, but they didn't like it, but I liked it more, so I kept it. Okay, into Blender now. So here's the duck that I made as an example. So, oh, by the way, in the task, I forgot to write that what I want from you is a low poly version of that bird and a high poly version. So apologies for those who already started making the task. I'll go and correct that right now. So it's just to make you notice like what kind of differences there are between the low poly and high poly versions. Okay, so here I was a bit sleepy still this morning when I wrote this task. 3-point lighting. Of your models. Okay, so you would have two versions of that same bird, one low poly and one high poly. Also, I think it's good to practice both ways of modeling because both are needed. All right, now that that's done, let's go back to Blender. So here's the low poly duck first painted and rendered. Well, not rendered yet, but anyway. Also, I made this sort of background thing to it so that I could nicely render it in front of it. And yeah, I like, as you see, I made it quite quickly. Also, I made the painting quite quickly, and I hope to paint it better this time around. So I'll start a new file where I will copy this duck that hasn't got anything on it yet. It's not even UV mapped. Okay, I'll copy that one and new file. Yes, save. Then I'll get rid of this cube, and there's the duck. And because in Finnish, duck is sorsa, or wild duck, call it sorsa 1. Just a very quick sculpt. But you can see that it's a duck, generally. Okay, and before I start with my sorsa or duck, I'll copy this. I'll make a copy of this duck by Shift and D, duplicating it, just in case something goes horribly wrong, which often happens when I'm in Blender. I've been extraordinarily lucky so far with you, that there haven't been any big mistakes, but they will come. Okay, so how would I start UV mapping this? So maybe I'll first show you how the UV map looks without any mapping, because there is a map. I mean, I made this duck from a cube, and it still has the same cube structure in its mapping, which would mean that if I would like give it some material or texture, it would look pretty horrible. Okay, it does have a material already, but maybe I'll just zero this and make a totally new material for now. And I'll take that slot away. Okay, so now we're all set. So let's go into the UV editing workspace, and what I need also is different shading. Let's have the material preview. Okay, nothing is showing but the white. So okay, if I go to the edit mode, and let's go back a step away, let's go back to the solid mode, and then I go to the edit mode again, and now you can see the so-called map. So you have seen pictures of cubes when they are laid out, and as you can see, this is still basically a cube. So it's not in any way logical of how the duck actually could look like. To make this less theoretical, maybe let's give it some sort of image already. Yeah, maybe that's a good idea. I can create like this test image here on this side. And the width and height are quite small here, so let's make it like double this. And then I want to generate a UV grid. If I make the UV grid, this should not have any. Okay. So now it's directly mapped on this map. And by the way, if I now have render the material preview, nothing is showing because the image, or I mean, the model doesn't know that it should be connected to this image. So where do we connect to it? Let's go quickly into shading workspace. You remember this from last week. So now all it knows that it should have this basic white color. So we need a node here to tell it that, okay, actually you need to map this image texture on yourself. Ducky. No, duck. Not ducky. Sorsa. Okay. So, like an image texture for our Sorsa, or for my Sorsa. Here, image texture. So this is the easiest way of doing it. Okay, so now this should know that, okay, there is this untitled image that I just created, and there it is. And I will connect that to the base color. And now you see it. And you can also see that it's not very good looking. It has these places where the texture is going like very strangely, and there is nothing on the beak, or well, because it's distorting the texture. The model is doing that. So this is why we need to have the UV mapping, or why we need to make it. Also, the feet are not working well at all. By the way, it would be wise for me to add a couple of nodes here to make things, to handle things better. So I'll just click Shift A and let's see, where are they? Oh. There's one, mapping, that's what I need. And one more. Nope. There we go. In input, and there's texture coordinate. Yeah, I think I'll take that one. So I will take here UV and connect that to vector, and vector to vector. No, don't do this to me. That's some add-on that I used. Okay, now what I can do, for instance, is here to change the location of the texture, but that doesn't help much. Also, if I change the rotation, maybe to 90. Okay, that didn't help at all.
What was the brown one called? The one that says untitled?
Ah, that was image texture. It's
Thanks.
showing the name of the image, which is untitled right now. So every time you have a node with image texture, it will show the name of the file or image over here. It's a bit strange, but that's how it goes. Okay, so I could also scale this to maybe 0.5 and 0.5, and that would not help much either. Okay, so let's change that back to 1 and 1. Okay, and let's go back a couple of steps, and I'll want to make a proper UV map this time. So I'll just disconnect this node for a while so that we have the white duck again. It wasn't like necessary to do this, but yeah, maybe it wasn't wise at all. So I'll reconnect it for now. I just wanted to have it out of the way for a while. Okay, so how to make this image, this UV map look better. Okay, so there are a couple of automatic tools for UV mapping in Blender. And first of all, I think I'll change the mode here to edge select. And so it's important that I have all the like vertices selected in the model. I made sure of that by clicking A. So A is for select all in the object that you're editing. If you're in the object mode, then you will select all the stuff in your scene. That's what I didn't want this time. Anyway, so the automatic tools for UV mapping are, for instance, over here. There's something called Live Unwrap, and then there's, if you go under Unwrap, there's the Smart UV project and the simple Unwrap. So, okay, let's see what the Unwrap does. Okay, didn't do a damn thing. Or didn't change it in any way. So let's try it again. This time I'll do the Smart Unwrap UV project. And this, okay, let's do it without any of these settings, and let's see what it gives me. Okay, it's better than I thought, by the way. So this time it has tried to see like what kind of areas there are in the duck and put them there. As you can see, there's the beak from one side and the head. I think those are the legs from different sides, and that's probably the body, and that's the body from the other side. Okay, let's see if I can do it better with so-called seams. So I take Command and Z again. So what are seams? Let's go see what they are. So, by the way, I think I'll go to the layout mode so I can see my duck better, or you can see it better. Okay, so you can tell the model, like where you would like to have the UV unwrapping, and you do it by creating seams. And the seams are usually put in places where there are like natural places where things are cut, or where you can't see what is happening. So, for instance, for this low poly duck, one obvious seam would be over here by the beak, and I selected the edge loop by clicking Alt and Shift, as you probably remember from last week. Okay, I'll just check that the edge loop has been selected all the way. It has. Okay, then I go to UV and mark a seam. Okay, another like obvious seam would be here by the neck, and now it's not taking. Yeah, I think it's not working as I wanted it to. So I'll need to do this the hard way. Okay, it's there. So now I can mark the next seam. And probably here there would also be a seam, because I want to make this sort of ring around its neck. Mark seam. And I think in the legs there's an obvious place for a seam, but here I messed up a little with the model earlier, so it doesn't give me the edge loops quite as easily as I would like to. Okay, so I'm marking both of the rings over the legs, the edge loops. Okay, mark seam. And then there's the feet. Okay, and there's a nice edge loop over there. Mark seam. And mark this seam too. It will not necessarily be much better like this, but I'm keeping my hopes up. So now maybe this could also be a natural place for a seam to happen. Mark seam. And then there's the wings. I think that could be a place for a seam. There. Yep. Mark that as a seam. Then the other wing, and maybe the tail. Nope, that was wrong. Still wrong. Okay, what's happening here? Now it's the right one. Okay, then there's the question of the tail, if there should be a seam or not. Yeah, I'll try that out. There is other software that handles UV mapping better than Blender, and I'm sure there are also additional add-ons that you can get from out of Blender to make it a better process. I'm not an expert on this, but let's see how this works out. Of course, I did try this out early on. Okay. Let's go back to the UV editing. And now I'll select all in my duck and then let it make the UV map. And this time I'll just let it do the mapping on its own by clicking unwrap. Okay, so that was horrible. Still horrible. And I might add that this did not happen earlier on. Okay, let's try it out a different way. And let's have the Smart UV project. And let's have a little bit of margin to the islands and area weight. Okay, now it's looking better. So these are called islands. It's not perfect, far from it, I'd say, but it, yeah. It might even have been better without the seams, but I can work with this, like I said. And because the node is still on, you might have noticed that it's now mapping the texture in a more even way on the deck than it did before. Okay, so now it's time to save this. Also save the image that I created, and then I can basically start painting if I want to. So first, save this. Right, and then off to texture paint. Any questions at this point? Okay, so now I'm in texture paint, and the thing is that I can paint both the duck or the like 2D texture over here. So both are okay and can be done. Also, I can have the like shaded view here to see better what this all looks like. And right now I'm taking my Wacom tablet, and let's see what we can do. So first of all, of course, I want to get rid of this like these squares. So I think I'll first make the radius of my brush quite big and paint all of this here with some cover. Here I can say if I want to have the pressure of the Wacom tablet or not. There are different blends. The basic one is the mix, and you get other ones there as well. There's the color picker, and before I start doing anything, I think, by the way, that I want to have a red duck. Yeah, before I start doing anything, I'll create a color palette by creating new, and then here, by clicking the plus, I can get, well, I can save my colors over there. Okay, so now when I start painting, it should also appear here. And by the way, what I forgot to do was set the symmetry on. Here, symmetry, okay, it's already on. So there's some mirroring of the x-axis. Great. So I had that before when I was modeling the duck, so I guess it remembered it. Okay, so in addition to the basic drawing tool, there's also soften and smear and clone and filling it. So perhaps with the fill tool, I could fill everything with an even red right away. Okay, and it didn't fill the, it still kept the squares, so I'll need to paint over them. Let's see. Okay, one step back, and then I can, like I said, I can draw either here or in this image. And now you can see that it's a little bit, like the islands are a little bit too small still for my liking anyway. Okay, so because I want this to cover the squares, I take the strength setting away, so it will be like just direct covering. So, or I could just go here and make the brush really big and paint it all over the place. By the way, what I didn't say is that if you get, when you get these like UV wrap islands, you can still grab them and you can change their sizes in any way you want, or change where they are over here. So you can also do unwrapping partly by hand. Some people are really good at that and use it for to do amazing things. I've just seen the tutorials, but then I have tried it out and noticed that I'm not one of those amazing people who can do that. But at least I can tell you that it's possible. So you do it in the UV editing mode, obviously. So if one area here is too small or too big, you can grab it by hand and change its size and shape. Just grab the vertices. Okay, so now there's the underpainting done, and before I go any further, I noticed that there is this little star by the image. It means that it hasn't been saved, and I could now save it with another name, or in general save it. So you have to save all these UV images that you make outside of the program. And I'll save this as a JPEG with it, and I'll call it okay. Remember, this was called Sorsa, so the texture is Sorsa text. Okay, and now that little star went away. And but every time I do any changes here to the texture, the star will appear again. And in previous versions of Blender, if you had done texture painting and then you closed the program without saving the texture, then none of your changes would be saved. But now in this new version, Blender will warn you that there is an unsaved image, 2D image there, and ask if you want to save it, which is good. So now what I can do is paint the model and then see that, okay, these are the legs, so I don't need to paint everything directly here on the model. I can also just paint them over here. If I want to. Because with the vertex paint task, you might have noticed that painting in 3D can be a bit tricky at times. And by the way, now I might like to have this like strength settings according to how much I'm pressing, and I could change the blend at some point too. Okay. But watching me paint would be a bit boring, and I can understand that. So I think I'm guessing that you understand the principle now, how this goes. So we could go over and try out to make a high poly version of the other duck. And then afterwards, in the afternoon, I want to show you how to get a little bit of texturing, so it doesn't look just like it's like this 2D paint layer there, nothing else.
Is it possible to somehow export this, like when you save this image, is it possible to just open it in like Photoshop or something where you could like paint it?
Of course, of course.
Okay.
That's the beauty of UV mapping, that you can add anything to it in, for instance, Photoshop. And as for the textures, there is also this texture over here, so I could create a new one. But this is a little bit weird, I have to admit, because it will only show me textures that are already there, and I haven't actually like imported any image that I could use as texture. So if I want to use like a texture as a brush, I need to go and open one up. So I need to go here to texture properties. By the way, I lost my tool properties now, but that's okay. Okay, so here there's a texture, image, or movie. So here I can open some texture that I would like to use. So let's go see what I have here. Okay, there's some grass and some granite. So I'll use the granite. Okay, and there's my palette again. So what it now should show, I should take the texture here. Yes, now it should be possible to paint with a brush that also has a texture. But for that, I think I'll change this to maybe multiply or maybe overlay. Yeah. It should overlay both the color that I have here and the texture, if it's working as it should. Okay, so maybe the overlay was a little bit lame. Okay, now with the mix, it's working. Yeah, and I can use the same texture, of course, over here. In the olden days, I knew people who would do all their texture painting directly in Photoshop. Okay. So that's one way of getting some sort of texture there. The thing is that the texture is not going deeper than, or not looking like it's going deeper than the like surface yet, and I want to show you later on how to do that. Okay, but now I'll just save this. Also save the image. And okay, it's getting 11 o'clock. Okay, do you want to get on modeling now, or do you want me to first show you how to do the duck with the high poly? I think the high poly, showing that now is a good idea, if you don't mind.
That's fine.
Okay, there was my sorsa. That was the original one. So without any seams or anything. So again, I'll copy this to another file. So let's get away from here. Delete the cube and insert the duck. And now I made a copy of it right away. Okay. Maybe I'll make it a little bit bigger as well. Okay. So in order to make this into a high poly version, I'll add the subdivision surface modifier. I could also use the multi-resolution modifier. It basically does almost the same thing. So they are just a different way, two different ways of doing the same thing. Sometimes one is better, sometimes the other. I think the subdivision surface keeps the edge loops intact in a slightly better way, because topology is important. Okay, so let's have the levels, 3 levels maybe, and I could also make it so that it's shading it smooth. There's our duck, and I think because the this modifier often makes shrinks things. The feet are looking much too small now, so I need to make a couple of modifications to those. And I did the so let's make the feet larger, and I'll also move them a little bit further apart. Still larger. Oh yeah. Okay. So I think I'm more happy with it now. Right. So when I go back to the object mode, now it's time to actually apply my modifier and make it like real geometry instead of fake geometry. And now I have a high poly duck. So if I go to edit mode, this is what it actually looks like. So it has a high polygon count, and that's where the high poly comes from. And but as you can see, the like edge loops look clean. And now I can make a couple of seams here where I want them to be by marking the edge loops with the Alt and Shift. So, okay, where should the beak be? Okay, better to have edge select when you do this. That's also a mistake that I keep doing all the time. Okay, there's my first seam, the beak. Then there should be one seam here at the neck. Another one here. And I'm thinking that maybe there should be another seam over here. Like if I wanted to make the islands like really nice looking with the seams, I could put a seam here in the middle, for instance, but that would be like a really conspicuous place. Maybe I should do it anyway. Yeah, maybe this could work. Okay, I'll try this out. Not promising that it will look good in the end. Okay, there's the wing seam. Or should it be over here? No, there's where the edge loop is broken, so, and there where it's held. There we go. And there's the feet. Okay, this was not a good idea. And the seam there. Here. Okay, I think there's something wrong over there. Okay, and then there's one final one for the tail. No. There you go. Okay, let's see how this works out. Like I said, at this point I might want to save it again. And let's get into the UV editing. And let's try out the simple unwrap first, and then the Smart UV project. Okay, there's also the unwrap options, by the way, that I could look. No, why is it not showing? But yeah, it's the simple unwrap is not working very well. So let's try again the Smart UV project. So I could fiddle with these settings and try out how they go. Okay. So what I actually wanted to have was something not quite this what's the word? Repaleinen? Raggy? But I could live with this as well. Okay, so the continuance of this would be the same as we saw, as I showed you earlier already, that to either open an image or create a new one for test purposes, change. I mean, the 1000 times 1000 pixels is quite small, and there are like I say the 2048 is like the minimum, but there are lots smaller ones as well. And here, UV grid. And then in order to make this actually look like something to be attached, I need to go to the shading and tell the program, tell Blender that I want this image to be attached here, and I need to check if the source does have a basic texture. That's great. So now I could add the image texture and click here on this untitled, or I could just get an image, open up one. If I didn't want to start painting this, I could get another one. Any picture would do, actually. Okay, it doesn't have to be a texture at all. It can be like any sort of picture. But it's now mapping on my source. So yeah, as I changed this to the other image now, the node tells me the name of that image. Okay, so then I would just continue painting on this duck. And of course, if I were smart, I would add the mapping nodes over here, because those are useful later on. Okay, and I guess I'll stop sharing now and stop the recording.